So Microsoft reached out recently and sent me a very interesting package, and you might think that with the new Xbox Series X launching very soon that it's an Xbox, but it's actually not. It's something different. Now, as a reminder, this isn't a paid sponsored video or anything, but they did send me free stuff that I'm going to talk about, so you can call it whatever you want. So anyway, what they sent me was this interesting, nice looking box, and it said Game Pass on the top, and some cool stuff inside that actually did kind of confuse me at first. Because the first thing I saw was a phone. It was the Samsung Note 25G, and this confused me because I was wondering, why is Microsoft sending me a phone to promote the Xbox? But then looking at all the other stuff inside, it started to make sense. Because also inside was a Razer Kishi, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, which is basically an Xbox controller attachment for phones. And then along with that, there was a mount to attach the phone to an Xbox controller, and then all of these things were custom branded to say Xbox Game Pass on them. And finally, there was a really cool plastic token that had an engraved 12-month code for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. And then it dawned on me the reason they sent the phone and the other accessories was to promote not just the Game Pass, but also the Game Pass's cloud streaming capabilities. You see, Microsoft has really been pushing their Game Pass subscriptions for Xbox really hard, and there are 3 of these tiers. So the first 2 are the Game Pass for either PC or console, and both of these are about $10 a month. And basically, it's kind of like a Netflix for games. You pay the $10 a month, and then you have access to a library of over 100 games, I think, right now. And then you can download and install any of those games in the library, play it as much as you want on your console or your PC, depending on which one you have. And I do want to make it clear, with these, you are downloading and installing the game. You're not just streaming them like other services like Stadia or something like that. Then the third one is the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which is basically like a combination of the PC and console one, except it does have extra stuff such as Xbox Live Gold subscription included and some other in-game promo stuff. However, the Ultimate also has cloud streaming on certain games on Android phones, which is currently in beta, so that explains why they sent the box with all the phone stuff in it. So obviously I had to try it all out. So the Razer controller attachment basically expands out, and then you just kind of hook it onto the sides of the phone, or alternatively you can use the mount to actually use a regular controller, and I definitely think I prefer just using a regular Xbox controller with the Bluetooth. It's definitely more ergonomical to use a regular controller, although it is a little bit more bulky. Now, as for the cloud gaming experience, I think it's okay for mobile. I'm always very skeptical of cloud gaming in general, mostly because of input lag. I think that if you have the option, installing the game is going to be better every single time, and cloud gaming is still sort of ahead of its time because of that. I think it's not quite there in terms of being able to play any game that you want because of input latency, such as for multiplayer, quick reaction times required type stuff. But for like here, where if the goal is to just let you play full Xbox games on a phone, that's another story, because it'd be impossible to install and run a full game without the cloud anyway. So cloud gaming is better than nothing in the case for a phone. Now, the input latency is obviously going to be there, but it does say it's still in beta, so I'm sure they're working on improving that. But I will say it might not be as noticeable because console games tend to have higher input latency anyway, because you're typically playing them on a TV, which all have higher input latencies than a monitor. So if you're used to playing games on a console, then you might not even really notice a difference if you're streaming it on the cloud. It might be a little bit there, but it definitely won't be as big of a difference between input latency on a natively installed PC game and a streamed PC game, for instance, where using a mouse and keyboard, it's definitely way easier to notice that extra latency. Now, I tried a few different games, such as Destiny 2, and I definitely found it playable. If I was trying to do competitive multiplayer or something, I'd probably have a disadvantage, but otherwise, you probably would get used to it. It's basically like, I would say, maybe playing on a TV that has no game mode and has that extra latency on there. I also tried some more casual games like Minecraft Dungeons, and that actually seemed really well suited for this kind of game where snap reactions aren't really necessary. There's also some other games you can play that don't require a controller at all. They're labeled as Play with Touch, and these have overlay buttons in replacement of a physical controller. So the left side has a joystick, and then the right side has a bunch of mapped buttons, and the interface will actually change depending on the game. So it looks like they went in and designed customized touch interfaces, which is nice for each game. For example, on Minecraft Dungeons, it has an extra map and inventory buttons on the left side, whereas other games I saw didn't have that. So it's not like they just slapped on the same interface and said, good luck. It seems like they actually went in and put some effort into it. As for playing with these overlay touch controls, it's not really something I've ever done or liked. I obviously strongly prefer a physical controller, but I found that the controls were at least playable for basic games like platformers, though I wouldn't try it for something like an FPS basically. But if you are someone who already is used to playing games with touch overlay controls, you'll probably find that they work well. So in my personal opinion, is Xbox Game Pass worth it? Obviously, this is going to depend on which tier you're going for, but I actually am a fan. Because let me put it this way. So it's a month-to-month charge of either $10 a month or $15 a month, depending on which one you get. And if you're going to play, for example, a single-player game that probably won't take you a month to beat in most cases, then it probably would be worth just getting the Game Pass for that game instead of paying the $60 up front. You beat it, and then you can always cancel it after you do. And then if you find another game that you want to play, again, that would be better to just get the $10 for the month instead of paying another $60 for the whole price. Now, obviously, if you do cancel, you wouldn't be able to play the game anymore unless you renewed it, but if it's a single player game at least, then you beat it once, you might not want to play it again. Now, alternatively, even if it's a multiplayer game, maybe you're trying to convince your friends to play it, it's probably a lot easier to convince them to shell out maybe $10 for the month instead of trying to get them to pay the full $60 for it. And also, I've seen that Microsoft has been pushing these pretty frequent $1 month trials for Game Pass, so it'd be even easier to just try it out and convince friends to try it out if you want to play a game with them. As for the cloud streaming, I probably won't use that personally. I basically never play games on my phone, so that's not really something I would even use. Even if it was on the PC, I'd probably rather download it and not have the input lag. But if you do play a lot of games on your phone, I mean, that's going to be up to you. One thing to keep in mind is the Ultimate Game Pass does include Xbox Live Gold, which if you get an annual subscription to that, it's $60 a year. So if you're going to be getting either the Game Pass for PC or the console, and you know you're going to get that for at least a year, then it probably is just worth it to get the Ultimate and have it all bundled together for basically the same price. But in any case, I do want to thank Microsoft for sending over this pretty cool stuff. And don't worry guys, I did pre-order and buy an Xbox Series X, so that's going to be delivered probably next week. So I'll probably make more videos about that later. If you guys want to keep watching though, the next video I'd recommend is one I made recently talking about 7 computer tips that you should do every month to keep it maintained and running well. So I'll put that link right here. You can just click on. So thanks so much for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next video.